Have you ever dreaded delivering bad news to a team member, or worse, avoiding it altogether? Today, you'll learn how to have tough conversations so the focus is on resolving the problem and moving forward with solutions. Welcome to the Leadership Career Accelerator, where we help aspiring leaders build executive presence, inspire with influence, and get promoted. I'm your host, longtime CEO, Barry Moline. Today, we're talking with negotiation expert Vlad Bushin. In leadership, tough conversations are inevitable, whether it's laying someone off, addressing poor performance, or announcing a decision others won't like. But most leaders get it wrong by over-preparing, sugarcoating, or ghosting entirely. This episode dives deep into the art of delivering difficult news with confidence, clarity, and respect so you can lead without regret. You'll discover a 6-step framework for delivering bad news that preserves relationships and builds trust. Second, you'll learn why common methods like the compliment sandwich fall short and what to do instead. And finally, you'll get insider tips on shifting people from a victim mindset to a future-focused, empowered perspective. Get ready to master the mindset and tools needed to handle hard conversations with clarity and confidence. Let's get into it. Welcome, Vlad. It's good to see you. So, Vlad, you are an expert in negotiation. You work with the Cialdini Institute, where we both work together in the world of influence and persuasion. What do you think is an effective way to have a difficult conversation with someone?
Yeah, well, there are different challenges in a conversation. There could be conversations about accountability. That could be challenging. They could be difficult when you really want to get something and you don't want to give much back. Bargaining. There are many different things that people avoid, but I think the most kind of hated conversation is when you have to deliver bad news. Have you get a chance before, or have you get a situation before, Barry, where you had to deliver the bad news?
Well, I had one just a few months ago as I was retiring from my longtime CEO job. I had an employee that committed, let's just say, a foul, and it was in a string of fouls that had taken place over probably the last year. But this particular one was sort of like the last straw. He knew he had made a mistake. He had offended one of our clients. That client was worth $1 million, and that client threatened to leave, and it was a major problem. And we had to take corrective action, which was to separate him from employment. What we call firing somebody, but that's the official HR term, right? And I was also retiring from my job, so I wanted to give my successor sort of a clean slate so they could hire somebody on their own that they were comfortable with and not saddle them with having to deal with this employee that was not performing well. So in my conversation with him, I structured it as what I would call the sandwich method. It's well known. It's where the buns are like this. You say something positive about the experience of working together. And then in the middle, the meat, you say, but things have not always worked out well. There's been this series of behaviors that have not been consistent with appropriate behavior and appropriate work, and here's what they are. And then we had this incident just a few days ago, and that client is threatening to leave. With me departing the organization, I need to give my successor, CEO, a clean slate and let them develop their own team. So I've made the decision to separate you from employment. And then I gave the specifics of the matter, and that all sort of was what the lawyerly stuff, here's the situation, here's the quote unquote, here's the deal that we're offering, and the severance and so on. And then when that was all done, I said, and this is the other part of the sandwich, it was, I actually enjoy working with you. There's a lot that you have to offer. And it just turns out in this specific situation, because of that behavior, it's just not going to work out working here. So I'm hopeful that you and I can stay good professional acquaintances, and you can count on me to tell people about the good things that you did while working with us. So the sandwich part was sort of, we worked together, you did well, we've had a series of incidents that you're familiar with, we had a culmination incident that was a problem, and then in the end, I've still enjoyed working with you, and I'll hopefully see you on the other side as you as an ex-employee of this organization. So could that be improved?
Yeah, that's very interesting, Barry. This is a very common case of delivering the bad news. And as a leader, you have different options, whether keep the employee or let the employee go, or let your successor let the employee go. And in many cases, people hate doing that, and they delay the resolution of the problem as long as they can. They don't want to have that conversation. And I recently talked to one of my clients, and she plays a significant role in one of the universities, and she says, well, Vlad, your negotiation training, your negotiation tools and advice are so tremendously helpful, and I wouldn't be in the position I am now if I didn't have those skills. But I am still anxious about delivering bad news. I am still not confident about certain conversations. And from working with the people in education, the principals, the teachers, the deans, I know that they have to deliver a lot of bad news, and pretty regularly. And if you just look at the changes in the funding in education, recent changes in the funding, recent changes in governmental rules and other things, now it's a time when a lot of people in the area of education deliver the bad news. At the same time, business could suffer from the same in a time of crisis.
Yeah. Before you go on, I just want to insert one quick thing, which I learned over my career. When I first became a CEO, I was not very good at this. And as you described with your client, this person was not confident in their ability to deliver bad news. And I too was not confident. And over time, what I learned was it's not about me versus the employee. I just work at the company, and I'm upholding the standards of the company. The standards, we all need to be compliant with the standards. So when an employee is not compliant with the standards, then it's my job as the CEO to inform that employee that they're not compliant with the standards. And that may be a corrective measure along the way. And when those add up to several non-compliance actions, or if there's a particular action that is major league not compliant with those actions and the standard, then it's my job as the person who's holding up those standards to just simply say, it's like being an umpire, calling balls and strikes. You're not meeting the standards, and we have to take action to either help you meet the standards or to lead the organization. And my job is just balls and strikes. I'm just the referee, I'm the umpire. And when I realized that, it helped me significantly mentally. It changed the way I thought about the process and the way I approached the process. I was much more mature, still empathetic, but mature. So I interrupted your train of thought. You may want to comment on that, but where you were going was then you were about to say, and here's what you did with that colleague or that client that
absolutely.
you were helping.
And you provide a very good example. So you have a duty, you have a responsibility to take care of a larger picture. An organization, your company, the school, or maybe society, maybe family, and you cannot really make bad things happen, and sometimes you need to make a challenging decision, tough decision, and your ability to deliver that decision to the person who would not be happy to hear that, your ability to keep that relationship defines the quality of leader you are, because we are not defined by the easy times. We are only defined by challenging times when things get tough. What usually people do, what some of the leaders do, first of all, they delay. They just don't talk and let the problem fester, especially if this problem builds up, like with the some employees that they misstep one time, two time, three time, and you give them a warning, you give them a hint. Some people getting sarcastic, not really clear about what's going on, thinking that they will pick it up, thinking that they will guess that. But guess what? It doesn't work. And you have to really get to the point. You need to make it really clear that your role of taking responsibility really doesn't make it easy. Even though you're in this role, but now you have a responsibility to take on those conversations. And guess what? I bet your successor said, well, I don't want to do this, Barry. Could you please take care of me before you go? Is that what happened?
That's
Yeah.
exactly what happened. Yeah. And I offered to my successor, do you want to continue to work with this
Sure.
person and provide corrective actions? You might have more success than I did. And she said, no, I'd prefer that you take care of it and I get the
Yeah.
chance to start
So
fresh.
for leaders, it's not a question of if you want to deliver a bad news or not. It's a question of when you have to do this and how well you will do that. What will be the quality of your conversation there? So when do we need to deliver bad news? So you make decisions, and your decision that the other side may not like. So for example, you are laid off,
Yeah.
or decisions made by others, and that you're maybe part of it or not part of it, like budget cutoff. You may be part of it, maybe you are CFO, or maybe you're a CEO, you are part of it, but the decision made collaboratively. And I'm sorry, the budget for the project cut off, you lay off the whole thing, right? Or changes that negatively impacting that demand decisions. So for example, changes about tariffs. They impact a lot of businesses right now. And because of those tariffs, there could be come to some bad news to be delivered. Sorry, we can't make business with you anymore. We need to change that. We can't pay you that as much anymore. We need to we need to renegotiate all of this, a bad decision. So you need to actually be able to do that. Or holding others accountable. That's another thing. When you need to do that. Just a couple of examples, like performance termination or rejection out after final round of interviews. That's another case, right? So you have to do that. Or the school principal is saying your child will be suspended. Imagine how difficult it could be for a parent to receive the message that your child was suspended. They come to the school principals and teachers mad and screaming at them and saying like, why did you suspend my child? It is so emotionally draining for teachers, but they have to do it and they have to hold that conversation. Is there a choice? No, there is no choice. You got to do this, and you need to do it with grace, but with the grit. You need to have stuff done gracefully, so you would keep the relationship and you will project how much you care about people, including the people who are on the fence. Or missing the revenue targets, you need to deliver that news to people. Or maybe for a doctor to patient, that diagnosis disclosure, it could be bad news. So there are so many professions. Or maybe you buy a house and you're, as a real estate agent, you need to say that our offer was rejected. How you deliver that, it's important. There are so many cases, and sometimes what people do, unfortunately, they just start ghosting people. They just don't deliver any news to people. They just close up and hope that those people will get the clue and just walk away. Isn't that crazy? But this is
Yeah.
disrespectful. That actually deteriorating relationship. People want to do that. So the other things that people do when they have to deliver bad news, they tend to over prepare, especially when it comes to layoff. They may spend days and weeks preparing for that one conversation and spend a lot of resources of the company just to have a conversation about the performance and the missteps and the decision that's been made. Overspending your resources is one other thing. What other things people do? They do that sandwich approach or sugar coating. There is another kind of cliche. People say sugar coating. Well, they sugar coating bitter pill, so you can swallow that and you can consume that and hopefully not die. Right? A bit of poison that you need to eat, right? That they are given. So the sandwich approach is so common. It's probably the cheapest thing to exercise because it's very simple. You don't need to think about this hard. It's very simple. Good news, bad news, good news, or positive, negative, positive. But it's very recognizable. Unfortunately, it's so
Yeah.
recognizable.
And by the way, the positive on the backside is not just like you're wonderful. It's we're taking corrective measures. We just agreed to you doing those new corrective measures. That's the new road we're going to go down. It still ends, we hope, on a positive note where you're going to continue to work here or something has changed, but this is a new road that we're on. So to me, that's the goal. Of course, like you said, it's a simple method that I learned decades ago. It was easy to remember, and I could call it back when necessary and then jot a few notes down to make sure that I knew what the bad news was. Now come up with some things about working together and then making the adjustment to move forward. So what you said there about ghosting, yeah, that's a very common wish. Oh, if I just don't talk to this person, then maybe they'll go away, or maybe they'll fix the behavior
Right.
on their own when they're not going to because they don't know what they did wrong. So they're just going to continue
Yeah.
to do whatever it was. And by the way, when it comes to separating somebody from employment, there are actual legal elements that have to be included. There are details that have to be included. So the meat of the sandwich, whether you're going to tell me a better way in a second, but the meat of the sandwich still has to be included because they have to know that there's a detailed write up. They have to know that they have so many days to make a decision, yes or no, if they want a severance and so on. So there's some legal elements in there. I think I'm eager to hear your concept for helping to have some of these difficult conversations and delivering bad news.
Of course, there are legal aspects of that. You kind of need to make it the right way, and we know that. HR usually involved in that to make sure that all the T's are crossed and I's dotted. At the same time, the question is how much time do you spend on that? Because you could easily spend hours and days preparing for that, sweating that conversation. There is a whole movie about this called Up in the Air, when at the crisis time, companies hired professionals to lay off their guys, their folks, because they couldn't do it, because it was so emotionally draining. They just didn't want to do this quote-unquote dirty job of firing people. So, well, we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to get into that. But the thing is, like everybody knows sandwich approach. And what I learned is if my boss invites me to a lunch, that's going to be bad news. Don't go to a lunch with your boss. Don't do that. Whether you will be laid off or you will be demoted or whatever, bosses do not invite people to lunches just in case. If boss want to invite you to lunch, the boss would invite the whole team and make a happy hour. That's what bosses do when they're happy. If your boss invites you individual lunch, man, you better be sick on that day. Okay, so that's pretty accurate. So the sandwich approach is pretty recognizable. But also think about this. When you do the sandwich approach, this is so common, but how do you look? You speak pretty much like this. Your body tells one thing, on your voice and your words say another thing. You come and say, it was really great working. It's been really great working with you. You're a good person. And your body is saying like something's bad's gonna happen. I'm going to tell you bad news. This will be really, it will suck. I cannot help you with that, but you're gonna hear that. And on your lips is saying you're a very, very good person. It's been a pleasure working with you. We know that you contributed a lot, but it is a so big dissonance that people just don't hear what you say. You're like, Okay, get to the point. What happened? That's what they want to hear.
Yeah. By the way, on this particular incident that I had with this colleague that I had to separate, I did start the conversation. We made an appointment to get together. I had an HR person in the room, and we did start the conversation with Jim, I have some bad news today. It's about separating you from the organization, separating your employment. That's the straightforward purpose of our meeting. So I led off with that. And then, so I made it clear this is a serious meeting. And I said exactly what it was about. So I think I got his attention. And then I got into the sandwich. And then I said, look, I've really enjoyed working with you, but I want to tell you what's gone off the rails here. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that's the sandwich plus approach.
Yeah,
But I hear you on the importance of clarifying at the front end that we're having a serious conversation about an important topic and your behavior, and I'm not beating around the bush about what this meeting's
right.
about.
Yeah, I think it's much more fair approach of telling people up front, hey, I'm gonna tell you something. Brace yourself. It's gonna suck.
Yeah. So is that first step is telling people I've got some bad news?
It's a better one, but I will tell you exactly what to do in a second, right? And it will tell you. I know you're curious about this. This kind of sandwich approach wouldn't work if you're talking about, let's say, you're talking about data breach in the organization. How would you do that? You need to announce a data breach to your clients. How would you tell them? You will tell them, well, I have a bad news. We have a data breach, right? So you could do that, but at the same time, what you say in the very beginning is very important. So you need to balance that and not being too short and not being too long. You cannot really make it a real sandwich and say, hey guys, it was been so great working with you. You're such a great partners. Our deals were so sweet. We want to keep working with you. And they will be like, what the heck is going on? Vlad's body is telling me something else. He's going to tell me something. It's much better to say, hey, I have horrible news. You're going to hate that. Brace yourself. And they will say, okay, well, hit me. We get a data breach. Okay, so that would be much more fair approach because you respect their feelings. You don't let them guess for a long time, and you get straight to the point. You're not pretending that this will be a good conversation. It's going to be bad conversation. And you need to communicate that as well. It's a fair thing to do. People will respect you for being straight shooter and not just wishy-washy about it. So one thing. The other thing is, if you would do the first step, give people a chance to say no. Start from asking them for permission. And you can say, hey, I think I have pretty bad news to say. And would you like to hear that? Can I have a permission to talk to you about this? When you ask them for a permission, psychologically, you put them in a position of control. It makes them feel a little bit more comfortable, but also they will understand that you care about them. If you say, may I talk to you about it? May I deliver you that?
What if they say no?
Say no, and they will say, no, I don't want to hear. And by the way, your fear is like when you offer them to say no, they will say it. First of all, it's your fear. And your fear is holding you up from exercising this very powerful technique when you're being fair and say, I would only tell you and I'll only deliver you this bad news when you're ready. And most of the time, I would say 99.9% time, people say, hit me. I'm ready. Just let me know. I need to know that. People are getting so curious about bad news. They need to know exactly right now. They don't want to delay even a second if you have bad news for them.
So the question there is, can I tell you this news? If somebody says no, it's more like, can we do this in an hour? Right? As opposed to, I don't ever want to hear this and I'm just going to go back to work.
Yeah, you could, if they say, sorry, I cannot hear any bad news, you could say, sounds like you're not ready. Something else is going on that you really cannot receive this message. And they may say, yeah, I don't know. I cannot do that because I am going through something. And first of all, you can say, well, I understand and I respect that. Can I help you with anything to go through what you're going through what is going on, and could you share with me about that? And when you will be
Yeah.
ready, because I think you need to know about it. I think it will be in your interest to
Yeah.
know about it. So they will understand that this conversation is inevitable. They need to be ready for that. And if they completely in denial and they say, no, I don't want to hear nothing about this, I don't want to talk to you, then Barry, you have a serious problem with relationships. That means it's not about news. It's not, it's a different
Yeah.
elephant in the room if you hear something like that. Then just let somebody
Yeah.
else deliver that news. If you're talking about layoff, get an HR professional, whoever.
But still, your point is that it empowers the person who you're going to be delivering bad news to say, yes, I want to hear the bad news you're going to tell me eventually, and I'm making this choice. And whether we like it or not, it's still a choice. And that act is
Yeah,
empowering.
that act is empowering, but also it's connecting because you came to them
Mm.
personally to say that. You didn't hire anyone, you didn't send anyone. So the other mistake people do, they instead of delivering the message personally, they spread it through some other people, and that decision or that news hit them in the wrong time, in the wrong words, and they have much bigger problem. And then they need to put off the whole fire about this. So don't do this. Come there yourself, a decision maker, keep your ground and ask them for permission to deliver that. That will tell them that you care about them, you care about their emotional state, you respect their emotional state, they respect what's going on with them, you respect how they feel about it. It's all about respect. And when they feel that,
Yeah.
they will see a lot of support. And when they feel they are in control, they say, okay,
Mm.
I'm ready because I'm safe with you to deliver me that bad news. Once you do that, tell them your facts and your story. And you need to do both. If you tell them something like, your performance was not okay, you are sloppy about your process, that's all your judgments. It doesn't work. You need to be factual. You need to say, that's an expectation, that's the result. This is what we agreed about, this is what happened. You need to be factual first, and then you have to tell your story. Because if you just give facts to people, people could be very confused. So for example, if I tell you, Barry, it is 80 degrees outside. Barry, your shoes are in the lobby. Barry, you're overweight. It doesn't tell you nothing. Well, overweight, it will be judgment. Barry, your weight is 120 pounds, whatever. It doesn't tell you anything. It's just a set of facts. You need to put them together to craft a message. Like, Barry, I want you to go and jog, right? Now you're like, oh, you are about that. Okay, Vlad, now I understand what you mean, right? So you need to deliver your facts. You need to say, what is your fact that you observe? You need to tell your story. You also need to add your expectations. You cannot miss your expectations. You need to put it out there. You need to say, it's expectations of facts about you. That's what I expect to happen, and that doesn't meet my expectations. You can actually be wrong about your expectations, and you need to be very straight about that. You can say, like, I may be wrong about my expectations, but that's what my expectations are. And they can't debate it because it's your expectations. And then you need to ask them about, let them respond, and ask them, encourage them to talk how they see the situation, what they observe, right? Acknowledge their answer. The third
Yeah.
step is acknowledging their answer and labeling what they're going through and what they feel about it.
So this is after you've described, let's say they have behaved poorly, there's some problem with their performance at work, you've described what that is, and then you pause and you say, tell me your perspective on this situation. Something of that nature where you give them the chance to say, okay, I heard what you just said, Vlad. Now let me tell you my
Yeah,
perspective on what I
exactly.
saw. Is
Exactly.
that the
So
idea?
on
Okay.
step number one, ask the permission to deliver the bad news. And step number two, you share your facts and the story to describe the problem. What's the problem? They need to know what's the problem. And you need to describe the problem as your perspective, your personal perspective. You can't really negotiate that on behalf of an organization and say, well, the company X decided, nothing against Elon Musk, not the company X, but let's say the company XYZ decided that don't make it selfless. You need to put yourself on the line, and you need to say what you think, and you could say, in my perspective, this is the undesirable performance here, and I have a responsibility to uphold the standards of the company. That's my role. I have to act on that behalf. You can bring your organization into the picture and the rules that you're upholding, but you need to say that this performance is undesirable, and unfortunately we made a tough decision to let you go. And what is your perspective? How do you see things? And you need to give a chance them to respond. They respond. Well, layoff is a little bit more specific. Let's say there's a budget shortfall, and as a CFO of the company, you need to speak on behalf of the board and deliver to a manager or a VP of a department that their department is getting closed, right? You can say, we had a conversation, we had the meeting with the board, we tried this approach, we tried the funding approach. Unfortunately, those things were declined, and now we are at the point when we need to make a tough decision and close this project. What is your perspective? And let them articulate their position, their vision. And here is what the shift happened, the kick happened here, when the real magic happened here. After you acknowledge their answer, you need to shift their perspective.
Shift their perspective? How
Correct.
so?
So shifting perspective is what we call that the crucial moment in negotiation when people stop thinking about the past and start thinking about the future.
Okay. And this is, they may want to litigate the problem or the reason for the bad news. And at some point you have to pivot to, now here's what's going to happen next.
Yes. You actually need to make that shift and refocus the conversation on what's going to happen next. In order to do that, you need to exercise two steps. One, you need to articulate your mission and purpose. And when you articulate your mission and purpose, it's always in the world of the other side and always to their benefit. So in case of layoff, you can say something like this. You can say, my mission here is to inform you about this decision and help you to go through this difficult time that is obviously challenges for you and get out of it in the best shape and form so you could be confident starting your new job. See, that's a shift. We're going to talking about the new job now.
Yeah. And now they're thinking, well, I'm not exactly sure what they're thinking, but at least you're trying to move them from decisions that has been made. They're no longer going to be working for this company for whatever reason. And you're helping them with their next move, easing them into a future decision, a future position.
Right.
Yeah.
Because when you get people receiving the bad news, they may fall in their role of victim and say, well, I'm so good and everybody's so bad and I don't have any options. You need to start creating options so they will not sit in the victim role there forever and demanding the options for them. They need to start working on the options with you right there. So that's why it's so important for you to have that conversation personally and not sending anyone else to do that, because that mentality of victim may actually hurt you in terms of they could make decisions that you're not even aware of. Mm-hmm. So for example, you want to have a conversation with someone about missing quota on a quarterly quota, and you somehow leak that information and that rumor gets to the person without you knowing that, and they quit. And you don't even have a conversation with them because they made a decision prior to your conversation with them. Yeah. So that's why it's so important to be there to read the situation and emotional dynamics and mitigate that right there and make that shift happening right in front of you while preserving the relationships.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's fascinating to break it down that way, to move them toward their next decision. It's very easy for someone to stay stuck in that victim mentality. They're absorbing the bad news, they're absorbing what's happening to them, and they're thinking about their life falling apart and no
Right.
income and what's this going to mean to my family and on and on and on. It's very easy to stay where that is and
Exactly.
not to be able to think about what's next. So what you're
Yeah.
saying is to help them move on to what's next with, if there's employment assistance, to talk about, well, let's talk about career change or a subsequent job or whatever there
Right.
might be. But nevertheless, let's start talking about your ideas for moving on.
Right. Yeah. And if you're really brilliant at that, they would be excited that they are laid off.
So this is a
Believe it or not.
scene in Up in the Air. Coming back
That's
to
right.
that, where
Exactly.
George Clooney
Exactly.
is his job, the hired guy to go in for a company and deliver the bad news that people are getting fired. So what does he do in that moment where he helps people pivot to the future? What's George's technique?
Yeah, that was like this technique. What could be broken down to multiple parts because what he started from recognizing the value and the purpose, and that person on the layoff situation. The first thing he did, he showed the pictures of his grandchildren, and he said, "What I tell them about this layoff, what I tell them, and what can I do when I don't have money to buy them medication and they have asthma, right?"
Okay.
And that recognized value that he wanted to be admired by his grandkids, and that's what is really important to him. And George Clooney confirmed that first. He said, "This sounds like admiration of your grandchildren is very important to you," and he said, "Yes."
So he's focusing not on being the victim, but on what is really important to the person who's getting the bad news. What's the foundation that might motivate him, right? Okay,
Exactly.
so then what?
Exactly. And then he shifted the perspective. So essentially, I don't want to kind of replicate the story or spoil it. You got to watch it. It's a brilliant movie about with the negotiation example, with many negotiation examples. But the fact of the matter is that he shifted the perspective to the point that he said there's another role you can play where your children or grandchildren will be admire you for. And if you give up this temporary role that you where you get stuck, where you will lay you off from that, you will really have a fresh start. Yes, we understand you are not a young man, but if you have a fresh start with your real dream and you start working on this, your grandkids will really admire you. How exciting could be if you really could fulfill your purpose when you're craving the admiration of your grandkids and you get it. That could be like a perspective shift in your mind. We call it mindset shift. When you change values, your wiring in your mind, your decision-making process changes instantly. And instead of saying, "I need that, keep that job," to "I hate that job. I don't want this job anymore. Bring me something new that really fits my purpose."
So even though this is the firing of an employee, you're still helping that employee try to cross the bridge to a future that they would find desirable. Now, if you're talking about bad news, that might be different. Let's say it's just simply, "I don't want to buy this car." You're telling a salesperson, "I don't want to buy this car." And that might be enough of a response. It also might be better to say to that salesperson, "This car is not the best solution for me. You should spend more of your time on potential customers where there's a good fit for this car. I don't need a car like this. I don't need a sports car. What I need is a different kind of car that's not available here." And I'm not sure if that is exactly what we're talking about, but nevertheless, it's still changing the paradigm for the person who's listening to it, that this situation is not a good fit and you should spend more of your time with people that have a good fit for the kind of product that you're selling?
So, see, Barry, it's important to understand what people want. So, if you're talking about, if we can completely change gears, shift gears here and start talking about the sales situation, and you're a customer, you deliver bad news to a salesperson, I don't want to buy this car, there should be a reason, and there should be the understanding the perspective of the salesperson, right? So, if I come to salesperson and I want to deliver him the bad news, and I say, I have bad news for you. May I talk to you about this? And they say, well, tell us, what is this? And you say, well, we work together. You show me the cars, and you show me this car and that car, and we had this and this conversation. And during our conversation, you spit on my shoe, and also you cut me off, and I felt like you completely misunderstood what I need. And based on that, I had to make a decision to not work with you anymore. That's a one message, right? There should be a reason behind that. You need to be clear about this, because if you could just come to the sales manager and say, well, I don't want to buy this car, they will say, well, maybe you buy another car.
Right.
So you need to be really clear about what is the problem. So the step number 2 is clearly articulating the problem. And there are so many people who cannot do this, and they mask it behind the smoke screen and let people wondering why the decision made this way, which is really disrespectful, and people feel really like victims because they are not even allowed to know what's the problem.
Yeah, that's a great point. So let's go back to an example you brought up earlier, which is the data breach. A company is informing its clients that we've had a data breach and some of your personal login information has been divulged on the internet or been stolen or something of that nature, or may be stolen. So you talked about how a company can inform its clients of something like that. What would be the process that a company could go through based on the 4-step process that you're talking about?
Actually, 6-step process.
Oh.
6-step process.
Okay,
The first
wait.
Now, number 1, start with asking for permission, giving them the right to say no. Second, explain what the problem is through the facts in the story. Number 3, acknowledge the answer and label what they're going through and how they feel about it. Then number 4 is articulate your mission and purpose. State them why you are here and what do you want to do for them to go through that. And then number 5 is paint a picture of the better future. Create those options for them. And number 6, the last one we didn't talk about, is ask them an interrogative question. An interrogative question, when you talk about the options, for example, you can say, well, we can support your future career, we can provide your recommendation, well, you could be enrolled, you will be given severance package, what would you like me to do? What would be the best help for you in this situation? What are your thoughts about it?
So I've been associated with a company that had a data breach, and I was a client throughout that entire process. They followed it. And I remember at the end, they offered a free subscription to, I forget what it's called, LexisNexis, is that it? Or a company that would watch my accounts for data breaches in my financial life, so in my banking or in my credit cards and so on, and protect me there. And then they asked, do you want that service? Just like you said,
Yeah.
They were asking me. They weren't just saying, we've signed you up and all you have to do is continue working with us. They did very specifically say, do you want this? And I had to answer yes or no.
Yeah, they may ask you, do you want that option? What else they can ask you is, what do you think about that option? And there are subtle difference between those two questions. The question which is called interrogative question is the question that starts with the interrogative question word: what, which, when, how, why, who. And there is a verbal question: do you want it? Are you there? Is it true? Those questions, the verbal questions, they actually more aggressive, and they asking for decision. They actually make you feel like you gotta make a decision on the spot. So when they hit you with this question, it could be fear fired in your head, and you may be back into your defensive mode. And the softer approach, and it is regardless of whether you deliver the bad news or not, those questions that are verbal questions that are pushing you to make a decision, they are good if you really would like to ask for a decision. If you would really have a collaborative and easy start on something, you would convert it to an interrogative question and say, what are your thoughts about this option? And let people comment on that. They may say like, wow, it sounds like a great option. I would like to enroll. And you can say, sure, I can do that. Besides, those questions that are interrogative, they tend not to create objections. They actually avoid objections because, for example, you could say, well, we can enroll you in that service. Do you want to take it? It only takes you 5 minutes to enroll. And you think like, gee, I don't really have 5 minutes. Gee, I never installed it before. Gee, what else do they want from me to know about my system? I don't want to expose myself. So there are a lot of objections may come to your mind before you make a decision because you're facing a demand, a quite strong demand to make a decision. Instead of that, if you just say, what's important to you about this option? What do you think about this service? How do you apply this option if you have it? It doesn't really push you to make a decision now or in the future, but it creates option for you. It doesn't bring your objections. It brings your curiosity, and psychologically people start to ask you more questions about this. Do they need much time to install it? And you can say, what are your time limits? So they can tell you more. And this is the negotiation way to be soft, to be really caring and understanding and supportive, and ease out the flow of information that is so important, so crucial for any negotiation, especially when you deliver bad news.
That's so interesting because usually when you're delivering bad news, you just want to say, and that's the end. And now you have the whole story. Okay, goodbye, and live with it, as opposed to leaving the door open for almost any additional conversation. It could go anywhere, but it's very respectful when you do that to somebody.
Absolutely.
And give them the chance to express their thoughts. Hopefully you've made an offer that they might accept and it can help them move on.
Yeah, respect is crucially important because respect pretty much determines whether people are on defense or they are comfortable, whether they trust you or they distrust you, whether the business is going or not, because business never works in the realm of disrespect. So I wish, Barry, you and me and Chaldin Institute, camp negotiations, and all the people who appreciate negotiation can change the culture and atmosphere of the business conversations we have and the corporate conversations we have to make it more respectful. This is my mission, to help people in power to create the moments of respect and negotiate the things that people must do anyway, but they want to do it by their own will, and they would essentially negotiate discretionary goodwill that people want to put more on the plate instead of following the orders. Nobody likes order takers. Everybody wants leaders. So to create more leaders, we need to create more respect in our conversations.
Well, this has been a great conversation, and I've learned so much about how to deliver bad news, whether we like it or not, how to deliver bad news, and to understand the difference between the approach that I was taking to a significantly better approach that is much more engaging, more respectful, and probably ends up with a better outcome because you're helping somebody to move on and see the future. Even if they're still focused on the present, at least begin to see the future and make that pivot toward a transition, a different way of engaging in their life and recognizing that they need to move on. By the way, I did look up it wasn't LexisNexis, which is a legal database. It was Equifax and Experian. Those are the data organizations or credit risk organizations that you can have a data breach on. Anyway, still, Vlad, this is great. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking about this. And I think that listeners have really gotten a superb dose of how to make changes in their own lives and help people deliver bad news when necessary, because it's going to happen, right?
Right. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. The only difference is how to make it effective, how to make it more comfortable, and how to make it more collaborative, and keep the respect in place, because it's really important. So thank you very much, Barry. I appreciate that. It's a great podcast, great questions, great discussion. So let's do more. And if anyone in the world would like to have a private conversation, now I offer 90 minutes free coaching for anyone who wants to get a sampler of just to get understand what negotiation is about. Because when I ask what negotiation is about, what comes to your mind, it's all over the map. It's a lot of confusion about it. So I decided I would like to share the 90 minutes with anyone who has a significant or any curiosity or any significant case. Bring me something difficult. Don't bring me something easy. Bring me something that you really would like to have, and I will be happy to help you.
Great. Awesome offer. I'll also put that in the show notes, how to contact you. Thanks, Vlad.
Of course. Yep. Thank you very much, Barry.
Let's see what we learned today from Vlad Bushin. We learned it's important not to delay hard conversations because it makes things worse as the bad behavior continues. We learned what I think is the most important thing, that bad news at work isn't personal. It's about upholding the standards expected of everyone at work. Every time I have framed bad news like this, it's not you versus me, it's what's expected here as the standard of the organization. It's always gone better. We learned it's important to use open-ended questions like, what are your thoughts on this? Vlad told us about how to treat people, giving empathy and respect, and in the end, shifting the discussion toward a better future. Thank you for listening, and congratulations, you are a member of the End of the Show Club. If you have any questions or want to get in touch, you can send me a note. The address is leadershipcareeraccelerator@gmail.com. And check out and engage with me on Substack at Leadership Career Accelerator.